All right, guys, to complete the series on the different troop types, today we're going to talk about archers. So the top two is, or the top three actually, is very clear. It's Hermann, ZL, and Boudica. There actually could be a couple different directions you go for the fourth one, depending on pairing, and we're going to talk about it. Okay, so in my opinion, I think Hermann and Zhuge Liang, or ZL, probably provides the best expected value in the game. So in this case, expected value, or EV, just means how much value that march is adding to your side on the field. It doesn't necessarily just show up in the reports because ZL's debuff, right? 15% damage dealt reduction to 5 targets. That will show up a little bit on your report, but actually will show up on everyone else's report. And then Herman's poison is ridiculous. I don't think people appreciate how good it is, especially as more and more people will get Herman's and there's poison all over the field. Hermann will actually get a lot tankier, right? Because if you max out 4 skill and you have max stacks, every march that has 15 stacks poison on it will deal 15% less damage to him. So when you combine both of those together, not only does this march trade really, really well, but what it's actually doing utility-wise is probably unmatched in the field, which is why I think it has the best expected value. Now, the challenge with that march is it feels slightly slow. If you use a baseline of like Guan Scipio as kind of the minimum, that's without the 4-piece bonus. If you use a 4-piece bonus, you get another 10% march speed. Hermann ZL is just clearly a step slower than that. So even though it's really good, personally, I don't necessarily enjoy running him around on the field just because I don't know, the march speed just is kind of a drag for me. But everything else, it's actually just a really, really good march. Now, unfortunately for archers, it's actually going to be downhill for the next year. And it's not just archers, right? And whenever a troop type gets new commander releases, that will be the biggest boost they get. And then as you get the next boost, right, so cav commanders are going to be released and infantry commanders, they're going to start getting pushed down the totem pole. And even though Hermann's really good, there is a problem with a second march. I think it's very clear, like everyone should be running at least one archer march, but I can make an argument that the second archer march, you might actually want to skip it if you don't have the gear for it right now, just because at least for the next year, there's probably a lot more value. You can actually get better pairings with either with a cav or infantry commander. I'll talk about that next. On the screen on the right, you can see on the top it's Elite Janissary. That's the special unit for Ottoman, and then just Royal Guard standard T5. And you can see that the base stats, because it's a special unit, it's a little bit higher. But with the boost, the stats are actually very comparable to the infantry, right? The archer and the infantry. And because I actually have a 5% archer health, and then I lose cav attack, I actually am boosting my health even higher. But for some reason, archers just still feel squishy. I don't know if it's psychological. I don't know if it's because it's getting targeted. But even though stat-wise it's showing that it's better than the Royal Guard, so infantry, and actually even calves, for some reason when I run archers on the field, there's just this feeling that it's squishy. And I don't know where that came from, but that's just something I noticed. And then really the biggest challenge for archers right now is march speed. So Hermann provides 15%. That's okay, that's good enough, right? But Boudica only provides 10%, and then Zhuge Liang provides none. And if you have YSG, it's 0. And if you're running those marches on the field, it just feels a little bit slow. So even though they could be effective and stat-wise, like theoretically, all the debuffs, it should be good, the lack of march speed actually is a drag on archers for me personally right now. Let's actually go over the top 4 commanders. So in my opinion, Hermann is the second best commander in the game, right? He has a 3-target AoE that's on par with Scipio. It's pretty good. That poison is very, very good. And he, out of the meta commanders, has the most march speed. Ashur, yeah, it's off alliance territory. I'll actually talk about that a little bit, but the 15% is actually really important. And then as more and more Hermanns on the field, theoretically, he should actually get tankier. I think because of the troop type that he is, that he's an archer, and the upgrade from Hermann over Boudica is massive, and also the utility he brings, he'll actually eke out Scipio as the second best commander in the game for me. ZL, it's kind of a shame, right? Because if he even had 10% march speed, I think he would be in the running for the best commander of the game. But when he's lacking March speed, because he has everything else, great debuff, a lot of damage, even provides 30% health. Like he has another like 3 target 1500 damage factor. He's really, really good. But the lack of March speed just really shows up. And maybe I'm overemphasizing it, but I'm sure other players who've used like ZL with Boudica have noticed it just seems a little bit slow. And even though it's really effective, it does almost seem like it's a little bit squishier than it should be. And it's just kind of a drag to use them, you know, unless you're like a archer simp or something, right? But in my opinion, 4th best commander, and really limited by complete lack of March speed for me. Boudica is very interesting because when I first started, this is July 2022, the big 3 was Scipio, Nevsky, and Boudica, right? Boudica provides skill damage taken increase for her debuff. Nevsky does defense reduction, and then Scipio does health reduction. And you want all 3, so when you're hitting a target, you're really debuffing the crap out of them. For some reason, she feels like she's aging rapidly. If you look at her stats, like even like providing skill damage mitigation, she has heal. She gives you 30% attack and defense compared to Ashur Benapal, who only gives you like 20 and 20, or Hermann, who I think is also 20 and 20. I think what's making her feel like she's aging is that, one, she's single target. So Nevsky is kind of the same thing is kind of happening in Nevsky, where it didn't seem like that big of a deal before, but it's actually showing up more now. And the other one is when she is bumped down to the 2nd March, there doesn't seem to be a natural pair for her where she works really well. So right now I have a max YSG and I ran her with a max Boudica. And out of my 6 marches, that was actually the worst march as far as just the trades, but also just like fun using on the field. And I'm really not a Minamoto simp, but I would actually take the Mina William march that I run over Boudica YSG personally. And then Ashur Benapal is, you know, part of that newest release cycle, right? He came out in the MGE, and his damage factor is really good because you have a 5 target 1500 damage, but then you get another 1000 to the target you're hitting directly. So if you're just hitting one target, it's actually 2500, which is right up there on par. We're like in the upper echelon of the meta, and you're still hitting 5 targets, right? He gives you a bunch of not a bunch, but he gives you a decent amount of stats. He gives you March speed boost off Alliance territory. I think people make too big of a deal about this. So if you guys didn't know, when you're on Alliance territory, you get provided the tech is max, you get 32% extra March speed. So you don't get that when you're off, right? So when you're off, then Ashur Benapal will give you 15%, I think. And when you're on Alliance territory, you're already getting 32% extra over the enemy. You don't really need that 15%. So it's more than good enough. That's not the problem. But the problem with Ashur Benapal for me is he provides no utility. If you look at him, you get some skill damage bonus, you get some normal damage reduction. He'll have his expertise, you'll get some like random boost to that march, but there's no utility there. And he's also MGE, so he's probably, in my opinion, if you had to run 2 marches, it'll probably be Boudica and Ashur Benapal, and it'll trade well, but I don't think he's going to age well, just because there's no utility there. And if it was up to me right now, if you haven't invested in a second set of archer gear, I would actually probably just skip it and just run Hermann and ZL until we get the next cycle of archers. And that's probably, you know, whether you're considering starting a 5th March or 6th March, that's when you'll actually probably think about a second archer pair, just because there's a big drop off from the 2nd to the 1st. Whereas if you compare, for example, Hull and William, which is the 2nd best calf march right now before the calf cycle comes out, or Gorgo Luce or Luce Alex, I would take both of those in a heartbeat over Boudica Ashur Benapal. So some strategies. So as you enter KVK 3, the archer wheel is actually going to come last, and also there's just not really any viable archer pairs, like especially since we're skipping YSG now. So if you are investing in archers, that actually should be your last invest out of KVK 3, even though Hermann ZO is so good, just because you probably won't have the gear because you weren't using it early game. And also the wheel comes last, so it's kind of annoying to wait all the way to the end. It's probably going to be like around Kingsland by the time you can get that. So it's definitely the last invest. If you haven't invested in a second archer march right now, I think you should only invest in 1 march, it's very real. I would put like at least 80% confidence that by the time the next cav cycle comes out, if you were going to run 3 marches, you were actually going to run 3 cavalry marches, 2 infantry march, and then 1 archer march. And that's probably what it's going to be. Now, if you are going to run a second archer march, the best pair will probably be Boudica and Ashur. I actually consider running Boudica and Henry, even though Henry also, like Ashur, doesn't have a lot of utility. He actually, you could use him to swarm. He'll provide a lot of value there. He's very tanky. He's also fast, right? You get 20% march speed there off Alliance territory, but I already talked about that. And he even has revenge damage, and he's just very like prickly when you target him. So even though that's 2 single target marches, but it's actually a really fun march to use, and I've run it a few times before. It's actually very fun. Right now I have YSG, and I think Nebu and YSG are about in the same boat. If you have them maxed, like who to run with Boudica, but out of those 4, I think Ashur is the best. I do have Henry at 5511, so I might do that, or I might just save the gold heads and stick with YSG. But it just, that second archer march is just not very exciting right now to me. Now, if you are investing in Hermann and ZL, you should do Hermann and ZL. It doesn't matter which one. You need both, right? To 5511, they're actually usable there. Then from there, you should get Hermann to 5551, and that's actually most of his value. His last skill and his expertise, honestly, if you wanted to be very frugal, you could skip it, or you max that last, right? Then, so after you get Hermann to 5551, you're going to max ZL from 5511 to max. And it's not necessarily that ZL's expertise is amazing, but it's actually solid, really good. And its 4 skill is also solid and very good, and it is worth maxing. And then after that, you will max Hermann. And if you can, I would actually skip the second archer march. So if you haven't invested in Boudica yet, I would not touch her. Not that she's bad, it's just there's not a like a really good pair that makes a lot of sense. And to actually go down that route and then invest in Boudica and then, you know, one of Ashur, Henry, Washi, or Nebu, it's a lot of investment for a march that, if you had 5 or 6 marches, will probably be your best march if you have the second best infantry march or second best cavalry march already. Okay, so if you watch all the way to the end, please like and subscribe if you haven't. You guys leave a comment. I read all of them, and I'll respond to the ones that I feel like we could have a productive conversation. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.